And friendships and relationships take work. They don't just happen organically. I think that's a fallacy that we've fallen victim to as well. Is like relationships take a lot of work. You have to voice things. You have to talk about things openly and honestly, and set boundaries and set goals within relationships for them to function fully. Because otherwise, there's no marker. There's like people can just take, and there's nothing impartial that's kind of holding them accountable.
Perfect. How you feeling?
Very good.
Yeah?
Yes.
Good. Very good. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me here.
Yes. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to welcome you to Scotland.
Are we in the Highlands? It's pretty high.
No, we're probably the West Coast.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we're in the West Coast. Not quite as high. I'm from the Highlands, so
You are.
when people are from the Highlands and you say you're
So
from the
you
Highlands,
know.
we know how high it goes. Yeah, unless you cross the boundary to the north.
Yeah. Do they, when you say if you're from the Highlands and you're not, do they go, did you? Are you?
Did you? Aye?
Are you? With the eye roll, the Scottish
Yeah.
eye roll.
Brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, man. It's been amazing being here. Feels like I've been here for longer than 12 hours.
I know. Wow. Yeah, we've been through a lot. We've walked through the
We've been
grounds.
through
We've
a
had
lot.
loads of conversations. My kids have been clambering all over you. It's been a journey.
That's been a joy.
Yeah.
They are just full of life.
Yeah.
Just love it, man. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll love it more because I know I can leave.
Yeah. I'm trapped here. No, it's lovely. I love it. Yeah, being a full-time dad has been one of the most rewarding things ever. Yeah, just being fully present with my kids, and we get to live in nature and spend all of our time together. There's no better gift.
Yeah, you're really flying that flag, I feel. Of like, just really, I remember the first time we had the conversation and you were like, I'm a dad. Like, you look straight into my eyes like, I'm a dad. And that's all I
Yeah.
need to be for now,
Mhm.
Well, for as long as I'm alive, you're a dad.
Yeah, yeah. I've been having loads of conversations with other men around this, and we often talk about what it is to be a dad, and what that means for different men. And I use the kind of measure of like, what is your end of life vision? When you commit to being a dad, what are you committing to, and how long are you committing for? Because particularly new dads, come into fatherhood. First and foremost, after not really being initiated or having any rites of passage into fatherhood, like there's nobody teaching us, no elders like really holding us through that process and teaching us what the sacrifice is and what service is, and how you show up as a dad. And I often use the measure of this end of life vision and ask men, what do you see at the end of your life? Last years of your life, where are you? Who are you surrounded by? What do you feel? What have you accomplished? What have you achieved? What do you still want? What do you desire? And when we start to paint this picture, it can be quite cliche because you're like, oh yeah, I'm like an old man, and I've got my family around me, and I was like, okay, cool, you've got your family around you. Who's around you? Are you married to the same person? Like, are your kids around you? Like, do they have kids? Are they around you? So what do you have to do in order to achieve that? And then you start working your way back. So if your kids are going to be around you, they want to be around you. They're around you because they want to be. And if you are a man, who is an elder and has kids, your extended family, your kids and their kids coming to you, what behaviors and what wisdom do you have for them to kind of want to come and be around you, to learn or to talk or to enjoy your company? And what values do you have to have instilled and held consistently from now, becoming a dad, until you die? And that's the measure. Like, how are you showing up from now until you die? And I speak to clients particularly around this, and you can see the kind of look on their face, like, oh, it's forever. I was like, yeah, it's forever. Like that's what fatherhood is. It's forever. And this kind of permanence of it and the responsibility for me particularly, when I first became a dad, I was crushed with the responsibility, and it drove me into a deep pit of depression. But coming out of that and realizing, okay, now I understand it. Now I see where my path is as a father, like guiding other men to realize that and take full ownership and responsibility and step into, you know, fatherhood archetypically, like really becoming a father,
Mm.
has been lovely. But it's one thing to say, you know, or state that end of life vision. It's another thing to break it down into like, okay, what behavior traits do I have to have, and like if my wife's still with me, like what do I have to have done
Mm.
to have that the case? Like, is love still vibrant? Is it still alive? Like, and then do our kids enjoy that? And are they modeling that behavior, or did they learn that behavior from us modeling it as a loving couple throughout our entire lives? And like, how is this family in the last kind of years of your life? How is it formed, and what did you do to contribute to that?
Mm. Do you think now it's more important than ever to set those worthy ideals because we don't have them around us to say, I want to be like this man. I want to be like my father was or my grandfather was. You hear that less and less, I feel now. And
Yeah.
I feel like setting an ideal, which it is, it's an archetypical, I guess, vision of who you could be.
Mm-hmm.
Setting that ideal and then working towards it, and then really thinking, okay, what do I have to be and do to achieve that?
Yeah, there's loads of elements there. Essentially, first and foremost, like we idolize other men. We idolize, you know, these, you know, famous people, essentially, or we idolize materialism, like rich. We see these people and we put them on pedestals, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
we like look outwards and say, oh wow, those people are amazing, or they've done this, or they've done that, they've done this, and as we're doing that, we're inherently saying that we aren't, you know, worthy of the same recognition, because like we're looking at them going, wow, 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 they're doing this, they're achieving this, and we're not actually commending ourselves on our own achievements or who we actually are. Sometimes we don't really know who we actually are, but yeah, we don't have this sense of community as men in our society. It's not as prevalent anymore. We didn't, you know, when we left the farm for the factory and we disconnected as men, we kind of drove ourselves into isolation, and we didn't compare ourselves against these ideals anymore. We rejected elderhood. We rejected our grandparents. Like, oh, that's just, you know, it's just granddad, or it's just dad. Like, what does he know?
Mm.
Whereas, you know, in ancient times, those stories and those ideals would have been revered, and we would have really learned what it is to be a man. And that's when we kind of lost that rites of passage and initiation into manhood. There was something marked for us, where there was a
Mm.
period of our lives where we went through, or we were guided through, immense challenge in order to earn the right of being a man. And the same happened for fatherhood. You know, when you became a father, like the people in the village or the tribe would honor it in a way that was marked. Like, you knew what you had to do now, and there would be wisdom passed down from elders that told you exactly what it was to be a man, and then, you know, what was acceptable behavior and what was unacceptable behavior, and you were held accountable in different ways than we are now, because it's so easy to kind of keep it quiet these days. Like, nobody's really checking up on us because we don't have that
For sure.
close knit of men around us, but also elders like really kind of setting the tone and setting the bar for us to be
Yeah.
good men.
And those that are, we look to through a screen, majoritively. I think what also feeds into the conversation is that men, we look to elders for the things they've achieved or they've attained
Mm.
rather than who they are and what they stand for.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been a very prevalent thing in the past, where it's like you want to be like someone, or I'm looking to that person for inspiration and to be how they were. Like you respected their values more,
Mm-hmm.
and how they held themselves in a room, and rather than the things that they had and the monetary success
Yeah.
they had. And
Yeah.
that's a big part of the conversation, I think, when it's looking to how the values of people and what they've been able to, yeah, inspire other people with.
Yeah, I believe a lot of us live in a life or a world of excess. Like,
Hmm.
there is too much. There is too much stuff, and we are convenience driven, comfort driven, consumption driven people, and it's part of our world. Like, everybody falls victim to that at some level, whether you're aware of it or not, or whether you're trying to work on it. Like, we live in a world of excess, and those kind of older school values have
Mm.
kind of fallen away a little bit because they relied on less. You know, they relied on maybe a smaller kind of insular world where you focused on less. There wasn't social media back then. There wasn't the internet, and we built a community based on the connections around us, and we learned through them. Now the internet's wonderful. It creates so much opportunity, and we can learn so much. Everything that we could possibly imagine to learn is at the touch of our fingertips. So you can really educate yourself and learn about these things, but there's a difference between learning and experiencing. So often we go seeking out, we put these other men on a pedestal, and we don't value the people that could be closest to us in our kind of male communities, that could teach us these core values and could guide us to be more virtuous, honourable, present men. But instead we look at other values or other markers for attainment or achievement or success. And it's just, how you measure success. For me, it's really important that I'm a fully present father and a devoted husband, and I give energy to my family through my presence and how I educate my kids, because we home educate. We've got a 6, a 3, and a 1-year-old, and we home educate them. And they learn so much through us modeling behaviors and us walking the walk. Like, we do what we say we're going to do. It's hard to do that. It's hard to learn model behaviors if you're looking through a screen or you're not connecting with the people around you. So for me, it's about how we are present with each other and how we model these behaviors and create this, this almost vortex of accountability, because, we're all together and we see each other really fully, and we can hold each other accountable to the behaviors that we see.
How important is it to you to get to know your kids? Because that's something that came out last night, which hit home for me. It was like, yeah, who's getting to know their children when they're not around that much, or
because we outsource it.
Even.
If we are not fully present, and again, it's because of a need that our society has created, that, as adults, as parents, like, we need time to work, to earn money, to support our family. But, that's one thing that we can give them, is like financial stability and, opportunities through making money. But, I would argue there are other ways to make money. Like, you don't have to work a 9 to 5, you don't have to do these things. If you'd maybe thought outside the box or try to create different ways or create opportunities for other sources of income to come in and have a diverse kind of range of income. But what I'm teaching my kids is real human connection and curiosity and critical thinking and following the track of their minds. Like, I'm not slating school on this podcast.
We did last night.
Yeah, it works. It works for a lot of people, and I can see a lot of children and adults who gain a lot from it. But from our perspective, we watched our eldest daughter, who was in school for a short time. We watched her light go out a little bit. It started to dim, and she started to come home with different behaviours that weren't, who we knew her to be. She was being kind of influenced by another set of people, another group of people, and we used that as an opportunity to teach her about this as well. And then as we kind of removed her from school, we watched her light fully come back on. Her zest for life, her curiosity, her energy came back up, because it was being kind of dampened by this certain level of conformity and kind of rigid education system, that you had to learn this at this time through this method and get this answer the same as everyone else. Where I like to allow my kids to follow the path of their curiosity, because that's how we learn. We learn by doing. Like, the most important way to learn is by picking something up, figuring out how it works, and then putting it back down and going and finding something else. Or we learn by moving through a challenge, whereas, that doesn't necessarily happen in schools in the same way. And by nurturing and nourishing my children's innate curiosity or explorative nature through just allowing them to experience the world and being there with them. And that's one of the most important things, is like, when we are fully with them, they get something different. They get something else. They get our full presence. And, I often, go through days where I turn my phone off, and my number one goal for the day is to look into my kids' eyes as many times as possible and to hold it. And the difference in their behavior from one simple act of like, right, I'm just going to look in their eyes. That's my main goal today. And the difference in their behavior, the difference in how they hold themselves, and the difference in the connection that we have, and how they're, absorbing the world around them, changes in an instant when I just sit down and look at them, and I don't do anything else as an adult. just with them on their level, learning at the same time, teaching them as we go, and just allowing them to be children.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it's
very
beautiful.
powerful. It's
Yeah.
overlooked, right?
Totally. Because
Excuse
again,
the
you know,
pun.
we go through life, you know, trying to attain things. Like we're trying to attain things because we live in a life of excess. Oh, we need to do this. I need to do that. I need to do this. Again, there's an argument for, do you need to do it? Like if the whole world, you know, went to shit, like what is the number one thing that you need?
Yeah, well, I think it's again getting clearer on who you want to
Yeah.
be as an old man, old
Mm-hmm.
woman, who's got the kids around when it has that strong connection.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want that, or do you want to always set them and push them further into a system, or push them probably more than they're comfortable with
Mm-hmm.
to achieve things that ultimately, is that the primary thing? It's important, but is it the primary thing? Is it the only thing that you're doing? Is it the primary thing that you're constantly reinforcing, is that they need to be that or they need to be this, and you're constantly giving them cues to be better or be more than actually just present?
Yeah, because we're measuring them against this metric that, you know, somebody else dictated. Like society told us they need to do this, and we're just kind of passing that message down. But I had a really beautiful, about 2 years ago, I had a friend, another home education family, and their daughter taught herself how to read at the age of 8 or 9. And by most people's, you know, judgments or measurements, oh, that's quite late to like learn how to read. But the difference was, and this is part, you know, I can think back to my own childhood. She wasn't forced to read. She wasn't sat down at a table and told, like, read this and learn how to read in this way. She taught herself completely, intrinsically motivated, and now she devours books. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Just let them find their own way, and they will create the motivation, create the inspiration to do something themselves.
Yeah.
And it's our job as parents and elders to just kind of guide that, you know, keep them safe as they're doing that, and make sure that they're learning things that are maybe age appropriate, and, you know, protecting them in certain ways, but allowing their kind of inner guidance or their inner intuition or motivation to absorb what they want to. Because then that young girl reads books like way more than kids her own age in primary schools do, because they were forced to do it. So they don't want to do it. She wants to do it. So it brings me back to a point of, you know, asking everyone, you know, what do you want to do? Like this inner motivation, this inner guidance. Like, what do you want to do versus what do you want to do? Because so many people ask, oh, I want to do this. Why? Do you want to do it so you're observed by other people wanting this thing? Or do you actually want to do this thing? And that's being true to ourselves. Like, what do you actually want to do? And just following that. Without any, like, if nobody else existed, if you were just on your own, like, what would you want to do? And we don't ask ourselves that enough.
No, they say, who do you want to be?
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
Yeah. Throughout our entire lives. Like, it doesn't stop at, you know, I don't even know when we become adults. I know so many men who honestly, you know, outwardly to themselves express, yeah, I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think I'm a man yet. So when in our lives do we actually follow what we want and figure out who we are?
It comes from fear. I imagine. I mean, I haven't got kids, but it's a fear that they will fall behind, or they will be not reaching their potential, or they're gonna just not have any friends because they're not keeping up in class, or whatever it might be. There's a fear there that's really, prompting the behaviour to kind of confine and push them. And
it's so fascinating. Yeah, that it really makes me laugh, that, because we've had people who challenged us and said, "Oh, like you're not worried that they're not gonna get a job when they're older?" I was like, she's 6. Like, when do you expect her to get a job? And do you think the jobs in 20 years time are going to be the same as the jobs that are available now? Or do you think there's a guy, Alex Banayan, who wrote the book The Third Door? Like, there's door 1, there's door 2 that most people go through. They go through door 1 or they go through door 2. But Alex Banayan says there's always a door 3. You can always find the third door, and that's, you know, normally through, you know, creative expression or entrepreneurship, or, you know, thinking outside the box, and, you know, just finding a way to do something that is unconventional, or you know, it's not normal, or it's not by anyone else's standards. But for me, I'm like, well, what job do you expect her to get? Because I can see the light in her and I can see her potential, and it's just up to me to keep stoking that fire and just watching her grow.
Yeah.
And she'll create a business. She'll be totally fine. She's going to be socially adept and, have a strong social network because she'll know who she is, and she'll be able to choose the people around her that are her vibe and her tribe. Whereas so many other people, don't grow up with those kind of
like a strong sense of who they are.
Yeah. And then because of that, like who they want to be around or who they want around them, and a lot of people just kind of settle for friends, which is fine.
I answer that with, name me one revolutionary or someone who's changed the world for the better that was conventional or did things by the book.
Yeah,
it just doesn't happen. A great artist, a great inventor, whoever it was, someone who really just set the bar for a new standard. They were always countercultures. They were always someone on the fringe or just like doing things a little bit different.
And it's that fear that you spoke about from other people judging, the education of young people, comparing them to, that young person in 20 years, like how are they going to get a job? It's normally fear because that person is insecure or has regret about the path of their life or something they've done. And
a lot of projections.
Yeah, a lot of projections. Yeah. Rather than just like, what's stopping people just going, cool, yeah, good luck.
I know.
So many people are like, oh, but you should, and why are you doing that? You should do this, or are you not thinking about this? Like, we're very aware of the decisions. We're consciously making these decisions. Do you not think we've thought about all the options and all the potential pitfalls?
Yeah.
And
can you honour that, essentially?
Yeah.
Can you honour that? Can you respect that? Can you support that? Can you ask what I need for that support?
Yeah.
In whatever dynamic it might be. You're my friend. Can you rather than give your opinion, ask what I need?
It's because they have gone. Most people have gone through life only looking through one lens, or like going through one set of doors or down one path, and essentially they don't know what they don't know, and people are scared of what they don't know.
For sure, there was a big thing that I realised after I guess education system, after college, after uni. I had this big moment when I was travelling, and I was like, it was so simple, but I felt it in my body. I was like, oh, I wasn't a C-grade student. I wasn't an average student. I was an average student of the things they wanted me to learn. Because I have such a, everyone can relate to this who's followed a thread of like what they're passionate about, and they can stay up all night and go hard in on something that they're interested in. And that's true for me. I'm an A student in something that I care about. Yeah. And it's that context that I lacked as a child, because I just didn't know what I was learning. In context to what? Like, what's the why here? Why am I doing this? Why am I learning this way? Why am I, like, when am I going to be applying this? There's little emphasis on, like, the context of my life, of why I'm learning this and what am I learning it for. There was some of that in school, but most of it, I just didn't have a why, so I was not engaged with it. But I realised, it was just dawned on me, I was like, oh, because I carried this burden of like internalising that I was just an average Joe who didn't have any expertise or any genius sense, and I was, you're really living in relationship to all those other kids at school, and you're putting your own sense of self-worth in some sort of place between that person and this person. You're measuring yourself versus comparing with everyone else, because you're ranked and you're put in tiers and categories, and you internalize all that. And no one asks you how you're feeling or getting to know me as what's going on in the internal life of Chris.
So there's like another thing. You've got one teacher who's looking after the well-being, the psychology, the emotional fluctuations, the needs of 30 children. And the teacher is normally overworked, underpaid, and deeply unhappy. I can say that from my own experience of working in the education system, where I was around teachers who, it was probably, apart from construction work, the most unhappy group of people I've ever been around, and constantly complaining about stuff, mostly directed at the children they were educating. Now, for me, I don't want my daughter in a classroom, or my two sons in a classroom, where somebody doesn't fully care about their experience of education and what they find value in or what they become obsessed about, because that's what it is. Like when you become obsessed about something, like I want to learn everything about this one thing.
It's attractive.
Yeah, it's amazing. And when you allow somebody to really go into that and you hold them and you just like let them, yeah, let's just explore that. Let's go. Now, I can do that with my 3 children because I'm there the whole time and I can stoke that fire and I can just allow them to absorb everything they want to until they get bored of that thing and maybe challenge them a little bit to stay in a little bit longer. But when I recognize, oh, we need to move here, let's do that. But somebody in a conventional education system like a teacher kind of pushing 30 children through a predetermined structure of education where they all have to get the same answer by the same method, and if they don't, they're not celebrated, or if they want to have any individuality or you know, creative expression that's unique to them, any uniqueness is stamped out. Because I remember my daughter coming back from school one day during the 4 months that she was in school, and she said, oh, she was really upset, and I was like, what's wrong? She's like, the teacher wouldn't let me dance today. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, she kept telling me to sit down, and anytime, like, my daughter's so expressive and it's part of her energy that she just wants to move and sing and create things. And she described she was just putting her hand up in an interesting way when she wanted to answer the question, and the teacher told her to stop doing it. And I was like, oh my god, I don't want my daughter in an environment like that where like who she is stamped out because the teacher wants her to behave a certain way. Like that's just too conformative for me. Like I just want her to be her and be celebrated for being her and educated as her, not as 30 other kids.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the challenges that you face? Because I know how rewarding and worth it is for you, but let's touch on maybe some of the challenges of homeschooling your kids and what comes up, and are there any moments of obstacles you have to work through?
It's a good question.
It's needed, right? Because we can sit here and talk about all the great parts of the choices we make.
Some of the challenges are also some of the blessings when I look at them differently. So the first is the lack of free time. So that's the number one thing. Like a lot of home education people, home educating parents realize that there's just a lack of time for us. But that's on the face of it because we're comparing or measuring ourselves against something else that doesn't exist in our family. But like I said earlier, when I leant into that and I was like, okay, what am I being invited to do and how can I show up more? It actually became irrelevant, like how much free time I had, because I was getting so much value back from educating and being present with my kids, fully present. And being a man who's the way I give love is through acts of service, and sacrificial service is the number one way that I believe fathers should really show up. Like, sacrificial service is how we show up as dads. We serve, we protect, we provide, we look after our families, we educate them, we set the tone, we develop a legacy, we develop our family values, we look after this family unit, not as the leader, but as a leader in a partnership to like really nurture our kids to grow. But the other thing that was really interesting was to see, because I've got 6, 3 and a 1-year-old, they're totally different, have totally different needs and know totally different things, and they're different levels of intelligence, expression, speech, ability, different energies. Like my middle boy is like non-stop from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to sleep. It's just like full of energy, needs to move, needs to jump, needs to roll, it came out of him recently where he just turned into a boy and he was like, oh, like jumping and rolling everywhere. I just want to be like a ninja, not informed by anything that we've done because we don't watch much telly. We don't have a TV. But he just developed this like need to be boisterous. So nurturing that while my daughter sometimes has like moments of like deep introspection, she needs to sit and think and draw and create and be silent. Kind of nurturing those two things at the same time is probably the biggest challenge. Like, how does he get what he needs at the same time that she gets what she needs? And navigating that has probably been the biggest challenge. And it kind of leads me back to the need for community, because
we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah, the need for community, because when these two different needs arise, it should be, in my opinion, how we used to live generations and generations ago in ancient times, where we could send our boy off to like where all the boys were playing, or where all the kids who had that energy, not necessarily just boys, but where all the kids who had that energy at that time were doing the thing that they needed to do. And you just send them off to the trusted community and group of people that you could send them to work that energy out of them. And we were talking about the meme that's going around about that boy swinging through the apparatus, and Jordan Peterson talking over it saying boys need to move until they're absolutely exhausted. I was like, yeah, true. So where's the community that we need to build to allow that to happen, while the kids who want to sit and draw and master that, they go to that room and work with the set of adults that like have a lot of skill in that area, versus like the musical room. Like, we need these different rooms to be able to foster all of these different creative expressions in all of our children. So yeah, there's a real need for communities. That's the biggest challenge for me right now. I think it's like, and we're trying to grow that. My wife and I were trying to grow that in the networks that we're involved in, and we're trying to pull people together and say, right, okay, how do we create this community that really, fully, truly nurtures our kids, so we're not feeling a little bit isolated? Because sometimes we feel like, oh wow, it's just quite exhausting. Like, we're all dealing with these things in isolation. Like, that home education family are maybe getting a bit exhausted in that home education, but to work out the logistics of, well, we're all dealing with the same thing, why don't we just come together and help each other? That's in process right now. So I'm really excited about how that unfolds over the next year, where all of our kids just get to be themselves, and we just, as a group of parents, just hold that and just let them be kids.
Yeah, I imagine if he's expressing that energy and just looking out to, like, because kids are always pushing boundaries to know almost, I say what they can get away with, but just like where the boundaries lie in life, just exploring. And I imagine they would, like a boy just exploring his wildness, his aggression, all of it, would gravitate towards the other boys, who would then almost have a container for that, and like know when it's too much, and then he would get that feedback from other children, other kind of older kids, to kind of contain it. And that would just make so much sense to me,
And it can be quite exhausting, when you go through periods of time where that's not the case, and you're dealing with that all. But because I was, solo parenting while my wife worked, for the best part of a year there, so like holding all of these energies, a lot of the time just on my own, was really interesting in setting those boundaries and being able to hold them whilst also, managing my own energy, because, as a man, it's probably more common for men to like lose their temper, or to get burned out, or to have enough. Oh God, I just needed some space. I need to go away and get some me time. But really leaning into that over this last year and be like, no, this is really important for me to then manage how I'm feeling through the managing of how these kids are feeling. Because if I become overwhelmed, like, how do I regulate myself? And how do I bring myself back to center so that my kids know that I'm fully present still and I'm still here, and I can work through what they're triggering in me as it's happening. So when they exhibit a certain behavior, or they push a certain boundary that makes me feel a certain way, and I realize it, I'm like, oh wow, where's that coming from? Why am I feeling this? And I can look at it, analyze it, and then sometimes communicate, in an age appropriate way, like how I'm feeling, and modeling that behavior to my kids so they understand emotional regulation and conflict resolution, and essentially emotional navigation to get the best outcome for all of us as a group, as a family. But it takes me being really aware of when those feelings are happening and how I manage them, and how I take the wisdom or the learning that happens as a result of that interaction, how I take that and give it back to them as kids, and just evolve as a man, as a father, as a lover, as a husband. As I take those things and work through them myself, I'm working through parts of my childhood. I'm working through parts of my ego that need to die or need to be worked through and moved through and let go of. It's happening all the time. I say that our kids are like therapy manifest. They're all the parts of us that we didn't deal with as kids, happening in real time. Like, they repeat the pattern for us, so that we can learn the lesson.
Mm.
And it's one, if you really lean into it, it's amazing.
It's a cosmic joke.
Yes,
It is.
constantly.
It's like being, again, like similar, being in relationship to. It's an intimate relationship. It's a high stakes relationship.
Yeah,
That there's a lot at stake in this relationship.
but you're fully invested.
Yeah.
I am fully invested. Like, I want to be the best father for my children. My end of life vision, if I can tell you, because we spoke about it earlier, my end of life vision is that I'm sitting on a chair that I've made myself with my own hands. My wife is sitting next to me on a chair that I also made, and we love each other unbelievably. Our love is so alive, and our kids have come from afar to visit us with their kids, and we're all sitting in a circle telling jokes in the house that we live in now, because this is our forever home. So for all of those things to happen, I need to do so much work between now and then, and I need to do it consistently, and I need to grow consistently. It never stops.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Just breathe that in.
yeah.
It's a big one, man. I love it. I love the clarity that you have. You mentioned earlier that we have sacrificial needs. Well, no, we have sacrificial
Service.
service. Do you think that's got us in trouble as men?
Yeah,
Because it's a double-edged sword, and
the,
it provokes something in me. So I'd love you to talk about that.
the way I see sacrificial service is, it comes from a number of things. One thing that's coming to my mind, first of all, is the book Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek, where we essentially make sure our tribe, make sure our business, our family, everyone around us is served before we serve ourselves. And if we need to get our needs met somewhere else, or we need to fill our cup, then we program that in, like we plan it in, we prioritize that in another way. But we first of all make sure that everybody is looked after, as a father, as a man, as a lover. And this sacrificial service is calling us into more awareness and more attunement to the environment or the people around us. So we have to be more emotionally aware, we have to be more emotionally available, we have to be more emotionally intelligent. We also have to work through, the model I've developed is the Alive model, where we understand our authenticity, our level of leadership, our integrity, our vitality, and our emotional mastery. And once we work on all 5 of those things, we come into a centered way of being where we can fully be of service, because we've wrestled with all the parts of ourselves that maybe are pulling us in different directions. Our ego is like telling us one thing, our interaction with modern culture, and what we spoke about earlier, the need for attainment or success or monetary gain, or materialism, is pulling us in another direction. We get a lot of draw and pull for how we as men show up in relationships and how we show up as a lover, within sex and intimacy and conscious relating. That pulls us in another direction, because society is telling us one thing, where I truly believe that we can be fully of service and we can fully revere, because me and my wife are in the best part of our relationships. We're 13 years in, three kids in, and our love's never been more alive, and it is absolutely wonderful. But it's been hard work. We've had to work through that, and it's taken a lot of sacrificial service from me to let go parts of myself that were needing validation, that were needing recognition, that were needing nurturing. And I found that in myself. So I developed this core sense of self-worth, self-love, self-appreciation. And from that, I was able to let go of all the things that I was projecting and holding as judgments or regrets or resentments against my wife, my kids, my living situation, society as a whole. Like, when I brought myself back to myself and started wrestling with those things, I could be fully of service. And it's one of the reasons why I do what I do, why I work with men, because I now know what my absolute purpose is, to support men to heal, grow, and transform. And to be fully of service is an interesting concept for a lot of men, because it has connotations of subservience. Like, I'm going to be less than, I'm going to put myself lower than you.
Yeah, how would you say someone can differentiate between what they know they need to let go of within themselves to be of service to others, to differentiate that versus what they know they can't compromise on, what they need from a situation, from a partner?
Super simple. Yeah, just core values. Developing a really strong ethical, moral compass based on a strong set of core values that you hold firmly but compassionately. And you set boundaries around that and communicate them really authentically and openly and honestly. And you bear your truth. When men lie, when men hold things, when they withhold a resentment or a charge or a challenge against anything, that's them not being true. So we can let go of so much when we just speak it. It's so clear and obvious. Like in the moment, as it happens, in a compassionate, honest, truthful way that isn't, projecting or, as making assumptions or taking things personally or, judging another person or holding resentments. When it's fueled with none of that, when it's just, as the camera sees it, this is what happened, this is how I'm feeling. I'm going to navigate through this now,
Okay.
and I'm going to be dead honest about it, and I'm going to set my boundaries around it, and I'd like your feedback on that. And when we have those kind of communications, we can understand ourselves completely, understand where we sit in a situation, understand everybody who's involved, all the different perspectives and perceptions of what's happening, and then we can navigate that and come to a conclusion that we're all happy with. But we withhold so much, particularly as men, and we hold so much against other people because I guess like a sense of entitlement almost that men have grown up with. Like, well, like I need this, or like I want to get this, so I'm gonna do this, but I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm just gonna head towards that goal or that attainment, and I might be a little bit deceitful or and tell some lies along the way, or maybe be a little bit not malicious, but navigate my way to get that at all costs. Whereas I feel like we can let a lot of that go because it's ego driven. It's maybe slightly narcissistic when we think about ourselves in that way. We can involve people in this process, and we can be open and honest and include them and navigate it together. And then we let go of that, and then we can serve from a full cup. And that entitlement that men deserve, or I deserve this, who dictates what we deserve? And how do we come into communication and conscious relating around that? Like, how do we understand exactly what I deserve, and what is that measured against?
Yeah. What do you think the biggest one is? That why we have that sense of entitlement?
I think it's just masculine culture evolving over the last 200 years, and how men have been in seats of power but not in their power. So there's like a misalignment there of men really feeling like we deserve something, or that we have worked so long to gain these things, but
We're
we
more
don't.
than.
Yeah, we're more than. We're just the same as everyone. We just need to be more open and truthful and honest, and communicate our needs in a really clear way, and set boundaries around things that compromise those needs, and then work through it together.
Yeah. So everyone can get their needs met.
Yeah, it's very.
And that's what's forced us into a bit of an isolation.
Yeah, because we're not honest. We're not honest, and it can be. I often say we can be confronting without being confrontational. You can confront things and challenge things compassionately, so that we can all be better people.
Yeah.
Than we were yesterday.
Like, there's healthy versions of all these things, right?
Totally. And when the shadow sides come out, what I was talking about, sacrificial service, which is where the rabbit hole we're going down right now, it brings me back to the king. The king is there to serve his kingdom, not the other way around. The king raises those around him up and makes sure everyone's fed and watered and sorted. He's the creator of order and purpose and fertility. That's what the king does. He doesn't self-serve. He doesn't serve himself. He looks after everyone.
So it's almost redefining service, really, because when I asked the question around that's got us in a lot of trouble, is what I've witnessed and I've read into, men don't know how to take care of themselves. They don't know how to give the service to themselves.
Yeah.
So we are constantly giving. There's a lot of nice guys out there that sacrifice parts of themselves to appease others, and it comes at a big cost to themselves. So that was what I was interested in. I mean, you have an amazing definition of it all, and it's beautiful to hear that. And it's like when us as men just don't take care of ourselves, and we're constantly giving, because I witnessed that a lot.
Yeah, and that comes from a place of pity, which leads us down a road of fear and resentment, which ultimately can turn to hate, which is very negative energy to be living in. And that can be oftentimes self-directed. It can be directed back at ourselves. Like that's where a lot of low self-worth and self-hate and self-deprecation comes from, because we're not feeding those parts of ourselves. So it starts with us and it ends with us, like the alchemist journey. Like it starts with us and it ends with us, but we go around, projecting and judging other people for all the things that we could just take care of ourselves.
How much a part of this is that we don't have the vocabulary or the understanding of like our own internal landscape, how to communicate what we're feeling? How much of that feeds into this conversation?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot of men don't have the emotional literacy to really understand what is happening under the surface, because we are like one-track minded.
I was going to say.
Yeah, we're one-track minded. We like to solve a problem one at a time. It's very rare that you find a
well,
man
you give a guy something to work towards, and he'll go. It's like compartmentalizing it all to like, right, I'll put that there and then I'll go here, and we can do that, and we've got so good at that.
Totally.
And then we do that, and then we're like, oh, that
wasn't the thing. That wasn't the thing. Right, start again, reset. Where do I go now? Whereas, if it happens in community, it happens in community when we start to open and normalize this way of being as men. And our earlier conversation around when we left the farm for the factory and we lost that connection as a group of men, it all comes back to this elderhood and this navigation of what it is to be a man. Because, again, we've been separated, we've been emotionally isolated, we've been put in a state of competition rather than collaboration. So we're competing for money, sex, fame, pride, all these different things, material gain, you name it. We're competing all the time as men. But when we come back into true collaboration, where we fully see each other and we don't judge or resent or discriminate or criticize these parts of ourselves, when we call each other forwards, like I've got friends now who there is nothing they could do within our friendship, bar a few things, but that has boundaries too, but there is nothing they can do that's going to stop me being a friend with them. I am fully committed to being their friend, and the way I friend is to support every part of them, including all the shit parts where I need to call it forwards and say, hey, no, like I know you and I know your mission. And that's the first thing, actually, is like knowing who people are. Like really diving deep and being able to know who people are, and that takes a whole nother conversation to find those things out. But when you know that, you can measure them against their own value system and be like, hey, no, you're out of alignment right now, I need to call you back in, because this is who you are and this is what you've showed me, and you've told me that this is your mission, your purpose, your goal, who you want to be, and your behaviors are not matching that. So I need to call that forwards, like, what is going on here? Why are you doing this? And then we dive deep and I support them through that. That's the way I friend. So when we come back to that farm mentality where we have, different ages, different experiences, different backgrounds, different ideas, different socioeconomic statuses, like coming together and holding each other through that process, like that's when we all grow. When I say in a lot of my events, we are the medicine for each other, because where one man shows up lacking or feels like he's lacking, another man will show up in abundance with that exact same thing, like a little Lego block. Just click in and feed each other, give ourselves or give each other share our true wealth, which is our wisdom, our stories, our perspective, our understanding of things. That's how we share. That's how we grow each other. That's how we help each other grow. And when we model this, sometimes cross-generationally, when we have grandfathers, fathers, brothers, uncles, sons, all working together, we get to see how we navigate all of these emotions, which lead us to understand ourselves fully. So we see conflict resolution, we see emotional regulation, we see all the emotions from joy, fear, sadness, guilt, shame, all of these things exhibited and worked through as a collective. That's how we kind of refine, like sift through the dirt of who we are and find all the diamonds.
Absolutely. The question I want to ask is, how are you thinking about initiating your kids into different versions of themselves?
Yeah,
because you think about that. I know you do.
I do. Yeah. I'm planning it now.
How's that gonna feed into?
So One of the main questions I'm asking myself right now. So my daughter's 6, and I'm going to start developing processes and programs, and it sounds quite formal, but like
Sounds American.
things that I'm going to work through with my children starting the age of 12. So
Yeah.
I've got 6 years to develop a really robust system that we're going to follow as our family, which is based on our family values. So we're going to develop a set of family values that we all understand and live by, almost like a creed of our family. Like, okay,
Sounds
this
like
is
Ben Greenfield.
yeah, similar idea. A lot of that came from, it was inspired by the way that he
Really?
operates with his
Okay.
kids, because it's really interesting when, like, less maybe intense
Sure.
and American.
That's religious.
Yeah, so just a set of values that we maybe hold our family to, that we want to live by. Then I'm going to essentially look at what do I want my children to be able to do by the time they leave home, which is 18, 19, whenever. By the time they leave home, what skills, abilities, attributes, characteristics, you know, character traits, what do I want them to be able to embody by the time they leave? And it's the same as my end of life vision. Like, I start with the end and work my way back. Start with the end in mind. Okay, this is the life that I want to see at the end of my life. Okay, what do I need to do in order to get to that point? Mm-hmm. Same thing with my kids. This is what I'd like them to be able to do, to be fully self-sufficient, financially, self-reliant, skilled, emotionally regulated, sociable, creative, expressive, book smart, all of these different things as like abilities, but then who they actually are, fully understanding who they are. Okay, and how do we work our way back from that? Like, can I do it on my own, or do I need to bring in mentors as well? Do I need to develop a network of people around us as a family that can influence or support their growth? It's like a business. You don't grow a business by yourself. You pull in people who have a certain skill set that can contribute to its overall success. Same thing with our kids. Like, I can't do it on my own because I'm only one person. I can try my best, but that's where our society falls down, because we think, oh, nuclear family, I need to do it ourselves. We need to do it ourselves. Like, fuck everyone else, keep them away. Like, this is us. Like, we're going to teach nobody else can tell our kids what to do. I disagree. Like, if you handpick your network, your soul family, like, get everyone together, then of course they can contribute their wisdom, because you've chosen them based on what you respect about them, what you value about them. So why could they not distill that down into your kids being better people? And that's what used to happen a very long time ago with families. Families were huge. We used to have like 12, 13, 14 kids, and you would all grow together in a community of other families similar sizes, and you would all learn from each other. Like, so and so would go over to that person's house and learn this. There's a book called The Island by Aldous Huxley, where he tells the story. It's fiction. He tells a story of this island that has a system of parenting that's so fascinating to me, whereby everyone is everyone's parent. So a child is born and he has several different families within his community, and he can go to each of those families at different times as he chooses, or he or she chooses, to learn different things. And it can happen as a result of him falling out with his parents or having a disagreement with his parents, and he would go to the next family and learn, being reflected or questioned by that new family or the extension of his family, why that altercation happened and where the issues were, and how he can navigate that and go back to his original parents. And this way of like teaching all of our children through community like really fascinates me. I find that really interesting, how we've been driven into this kind of nuclear isolation, since the Industrial Revolution, where it was just about our family and screw everyone else. We're going to succeed, and we're all competing against each other, rather than coming into community and collaboration and actually, oh yeah, I really value your knowledge and wisdom on that. Can you teach my kids that? Like, or actually, like, again, this comes back to self-worth and like realizing where our wisdom may end and another person's begins. Like, I don't have the skills for this. Can you teach them that? But it takes a lot of, understanding of myself and having wrestled with my ego and let that stuff go, that I can realize, oh, I don't know that. Can you teach that? Because I don't know it. And it doesn't make me any less, because I have so many skills and so many attributes that I find honorable and virtuous and, really respectful in certain areas. But I see this in you as well. Can you take over here?
Well, you
And
might
that's
exchange that for something as
yeah,
well.
yeah, exactly. But that's where we traded. That's where we used to trade with
Yeah.
skills and stories and songs. And it's
If it's that knowing what you can add value for
yeah,
is directly linked to feeling perhaps less than if you don't feel like you've got anything to bring, you won't tend to ask people for their contribution because you feel like you're not going to be able to give anything in return. And there's something
uh-huh.
around that psychologically, I think. But if when you know your worth, you know your value, you know what you
hmm
are strong at,
hmm
you know your deep sense of yourself,
And you bring that
then you
fully.
say, well, this is what my gifts are, this is what I can bring, this is what I teach, this is how I parent. You
hmm
do it a different way, and let's like see if we can
Yes,
sharpen each other's
yeah,
tools, you know?
when we think that we are the
Yeah.
be all and end all, we know it all, or that's when we go down dark roads. But there's a guy, John Thompson, who runs Circling Europe, who uses the phrase surrendered leadership. So being in a position of leadership, being fully capable of being able to lead, but actually being so comfortable that you can surrender that leadership to others and navigate and follow and enjoy the growth of whatever's happening, whether you're facilitating something or
Mm.
raising kids or you know performing a task, surrendering that leadership and just being so confident and comfortable in yourself that you can go, okay, let's see where this goes. And if it starts going way off track, then you can step back in and call it back. But just being able to tap into the field, read the room, see what's happening, and know that something beautiful will come from it because you don't know everything.
Mm. Yeah, it's always made sense to me to go in both directions, like strong, like that is strength to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like go all the way into the feminine sides of me, but all the way into the masculine, all the way into the student, but all the way into the teacher,
Yeah.
and like really be able to stretch those sides of myself and not just be confined to like mastering one thing and being that at all times. That's not true strength for me,
Because
because
we've been taught that's
mm,
value. Like
yeah,
when you're masterful in something, when people look to you and you can control the situation,
yeah.
that's value.
It's because it's rare. There's something around what's rare is valuable, but it's just rare. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's valuable.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've talked about some pillars of David. Anything that we're missing throughout this chat? We talked about your unschooling. You as a dad, what it means to be a man, really. I feel like you've articulated your what's really important to you.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've got very clear on that. Is there anything that you know you need to spend more time working through or working on? What are those areas of yourself at the moment that you know that are preventing you getting to the next level?
Oh, what an amazing question.
What part of you has to die? It's still kind of hanging on there.
I mean, it's dying, and I would say sometimes being attached to an outcome, being attached to a certain situation or what someone said or my truth and how I feel about someone or something that's happened, like being attached to how I feel something should have gone or is going. It's something I'm still wrestling with a little bit. Like sometimes I can find myself being quite critical at times because I hold myself to a really high standard, and sometimes I hold that standard for other people too,
Mm.
which is not a good thing to do because everybody's on their own path, their own journey, they're at their own stage of development. I'm not at the peak of my development. I'm still working through a lot. We never stop doing the work. We never stop growing. It's not a linear thing. It's constantly changing and moving in different directions. And I did a post a while ago about new levels, new devils. Like no matter what stage you're at, no matter when you move through something, you're like, yes, that thing is gone. I don't feel that way anymore. Something else is presented. Some other challenge is presented for you to work through. So occasionally, I find myself falling into the trap of holding that standard for other people, when it's not something I need to do. I don't need to hold that standard for other people. What I can do is call forward certain behaviors that I feel are that don't match, like I said earlier, the value system of that person that I've learned and they've told me and we've shared and we've opened up around what they want to achieve for them. But outside of that, like I shouldn't really be that bothered about anything else that happens. And that disconnection from the path that other people are taking, if I've called or challenged what I just mentioned about their own value system and it being way out of alignment with their behaviors, and if they can't listen to that, and if they can't justify it, or they just don't want my support, then that's fine. I need to let that go. I need to respect and honor where they are and what they're doing and how the choices they're making, because essentially everything is a choice. And if I've tried to support them and they've pushed back, that's okay. I'm always here. I say that I am always here for all the men that I support, all the men in my spaces, all the men I coach, all the men in my life, and women, but all the men in my life. I am here 100%, and I show up fully for everyone around me, but only to a certain point, because I can't force myself. We were speaking about Brené Brown in marriages and relationships, how she debunks the 50-50 marriages are 50-50, and she says it's bullshit, because what if someone's bringing 20? Like, do you just sit back and go like, oh, you're only bringing 20, fuck's sake, I'm bringing my 50, where's your 30? What you should be doing is bringing 80 for those people. So if it's your wife or your children or your partner, if they're bringing 20, then you show up with 80 for a period of time where you try and recuperate and bring them back into their full 50, and then inevitably at some point in your life you will be a 20 or a 10. And then Brené speaks about, what if you're both like a 20 and a 10? You need to develop a system or something to fill the gap, to bring you both up to 100, whether you go and to a counselor, or you go to a retreat, or you have a mediator, or you work on something separately or together, whatever it is that you bring collectively back to 100. And I feel like that is what we need to do with our friends, with our loved ones. You show up for them fully, but only to a certain point, and then you call them back into their fullness. And if there's a lot of rejection and pushing, then just again knowing my own value system and knowing where I stand and knowing where my boundaries are and knowing how to fill my cup. That's there is a boundary, there is a limit at some point, but my attachment to that, sometimes my over attachment to ultimate service, sometimes spirals back and it becomes a little bit negative. So making sure that I'm very clear on how much I can give and how much people want to receive is something that I still work through sometimes.
Yeah, it's a big one. Do you want that standard to be kept for you as well? Do you ask for the same?
Totally, all the time.
Kind of process.
Yeah, all the time. And it's really interesting, because so often, the thing that kind of dysregulates me the most is when, if I have an issue with something or someone, or something I want to understand a little bit more, I go to that person immediately, and there's no reason why I can't ask a question, as long as it's not aggressive or packed full of projections. But if I go openly and honestly and in my truth and ask, hey, what's this all about? Or I heard about this, or can you tell me a little bit more? Or why did you do that? That's interesting. I thought the agreement was this. When I have these things internally that happen with me, I go to that person to resolve them immediately, because anything that was withheld, like we spoke about earlier, it festers. It becomes, dangerous, dark. It stays in our body, and it can grow into that hateful energy. But when that's not done back to me, I have some issue with that sometimes. I'm like, if I hear somebody saying something about me, I'm like, why didn't you say that to me? That's really interesting. And my initial response is, okay, I'm going to go and ask them about that.
Yeah.
Okay, I heard that you said this about me. It was interesting that you didn't say it to me and you said it to someone else. Why is that? And not challenging in an aggressive way, but just calling forward. It's like, okay, we need to be more open and honest and authentic, because when everything is laid out, what's seen gets cleaned, as Tony Robbins says. We can clean it all if we're just honest with each other.
Yeah, I love that. So important.
Yeah.
It's how I choose to live my life now, as best I can.
Mm-hmm.
Those projection packages, just try and stay away from them.
Yeah.
I think the more questions we ask, the better. Like, don't underestimate the power of a question.
Yeah.
Followed by another question and another question, and like, that's not projecting. If you're just asking questions to try and tease something out, or just to get to know, it's like really getting curious about why something has played out the way it has.
And it's important to make sure those questions are asked in the correct way, that there's, unless the situation calls for it, which is very rare.
Why the fuck are you doing that?
Yeah, there's no assumptions.
That's not a question.
Questions should be void of assumption, because
Sure.
that's the nature of a question. You're trying to find out something.
Yeah.
If there's an assumption within the question, then that can be triggering for people, and you could be, setting a prerequisite, and it's not the way that we ask. It's not the way that we question people to find out the truth.
For sure. So because you place such high standards on yourself, and you are dedicated to your purpose, your mission, and being a better person, you're going to shine when you progress. The more you shine, the more shadows you cast. So how does that feel, living your life, when your behaviours, your somewhat better behaviours, and you stepping into your power and demonstrating that around other people? It can trigger, it can rock the boat, sometimes in friendships. How do you navigate those things in that, just taking that, the more shadows you cast? For me, that means when we shine, other people not stepping into their power, or whatever it might be, not shining, it's more obvious, and they feel that.
Yeah, just protecting my energy, and having the people around me who are in alignment with my values, my purpose, my passion, my mission, and not judging or having any negative feelings towards the people that don't, but just honoring them for where they're at. Because so often I find out I've been like a pretty awful person in my life. Like I've done things, said things, not voiced my truth in times I should. I've people pleased. I've gone into business ventures that were somebody else's mission and goal, and got myself into a situation where I was like, oh no, I never wanted to be here, now I have to leave, and it's really awkward, and it's ruined this friendship. I've gone into loads of situations like that where I wasn't fully honest with myself. And I think now, looking back, I can even look back and think like, oh wow, the people who knew me back then, when they see me now, like, what must they be thinking?
Yeah.
Was an initial thought that came in as I started really stepping into my power and feeling the way I feel, and being honest and open and true, and doing what I do. Like, I really love what I do, and I do it with a lot of purpose and integrity. But I wasn't always this way, so it's taken me to let go of that former version of myself, because really that's who we're wrestling with. We're not wrestling with these people who are telling the stories of a past version of me that they are comfortable with, because that's what it's about. Like, they were comfortable with this version of me that hadn't done any work, was still lying and being manipulative or dishonest or silly and immature. So they can tell these stories about this version of me, but that isn't me anymore. That's like a different person. So they're telling stories about somebody who's not me. So I can separate myself from the person they're telling stories about. And when I do that, I cut the tether to the part of me that used to drag me back and hold me down and keep me back from achieving all the things I want to achieve. And I can do that really compassionately to myself and to those people. And I don't judge them or hold any record of wrong against them or me. Like, it's just part of the journey that I've been on, and part of the journey that they are on or were on. And the second that I disconnect from that and just focus on my trajectory forwards where I'm wanting to go, like my path is clear. I did a post recently, like when the path is clear, walk it. Don't put barriers in place that don't exist. And some of those barriers can be the self-limiting beliefs or the attachment to previous versions of yourself that are sometimes told by other people.
Mm-hmm.
And when we disconnect from all of that, then it becomes really clear, and we become laser focused and hyper aware on when somebody who does not match our energy steps into our space. And it's happened a few times for me since I've really, stepped into who I am now. When somebody comes in, I'm like, no, like loads of love, but I'm going this way, and you want to go that way, and that's totally fine. But you can go, and I'm going to go this way. Awesome.
And you have that.
Yeah, totally.
Conversation.
Yeah, have the conversation. I just tell them, listen, I can see what you're doing, and again, just full open transparency. Like, oh, I see this is happening, and can you speak more to that? And if they can't, or if they do, and it's bang on the money, which the last couple of times it has been, I can just like compassionately disconnect and be like, thank you so much. I wish you all the best, and that's I only wish the best for other people. I just want everyone to go through life into their full purpose and be as happy as they can be. But unless they're willing to do the work, like I don't want them to come in and try and take something from me. Like I can give, but when someone starts taking from me, without my permission, like I don't stand for that.
Yeah, the more I get to know the audience of this podcast, I know that a lot of people are stepping into better versions of themselves and cutting away these ties. And the hardest thing, I believe, for people is to know when to say no more in a relationship, or to hang on in there and just, be the best person they can be for them. How they can change others is a big one. Like how we can, when we see so much potential in our friends or our partners, we see it when we're so attached to like the version of them we know they can be, and we've seen glimpses of, but we want them to change. And that's such a hard position to be in. Like not wanting them to change is going to allow the environment to change, but just knowing when in that relationship to just either cut ties or to keep pushing. It's such a grey area of
it comes back to that 80-20. Like when they're at a 20 and you bring the 80 for you can sometimes set the period of time. Hey man, I'm going to support you for the next 6 months, and I really want to like develop this friendship and this partnership that we're going to, I really want to help you. Let's do it. And you set the boundary like, hey, I've got this much time. And if they just continually over the 6 months don't show up, don't work with you or for them, then eventually you have to make a call.
You do have to make a call. It's good to set that time frame because you cannot keep giving, because when you're giving constantly, they're not going to be there for you when you need it within that time frame.
And it's interesting because like at the same time, converse to that, the energy exchange has to go both ways. Like I talk about generous giving and gracious receptivity. Like there has to be like both of your arms are extended and there's an energy vortex or exchange in the middle, but you both have to keep your arms extended for it to work. Energy travels and you have to keep your hand out for it to work. But the second that they are starting to just like draw more and more and more and they're not giving any back, then you need to kind of set the boundaries and ask the questions of, okay, like, I'm giving this much, I can keep that going, but I need to see this as well. I need to see you doing this. I need to see you doing that. Because, we set so many expectations, but we don't voice them. So they're internal expectations, like I want this to happen. Unless you tell that person, hey, like I'm really supportive of you. I want to help you and I want to raise you up and I want to, help you achieve this thing. And this is my expectation. And for that to happen, like I need to see this from you. And if they hear that and then don't do it, that's them, actively not working with you. And, friendships and relationships take work. They don't just happen organically. I think that's, a fallacy that we've fallen victim to as well. Is like relationships take a lot of work. You have to voice things. You have to talk about things openly and honestly and set boundaries and set goals within relationships for them to function fully, because otherwise there's no marker. There's like people can just take and there's nothing impartial that's kind of holding them accountable.
Yeah, man. Phew, we've done into a lot here, man.
Yeah.
Given a lot of people some things to think about.
Yes.
Good,
Yeah,
man. What
what a
else do you want to
pleasure.
speak to, and what you got coming up? What's alive in you right now that you're excited about?
Oh man, I'm really excited about the next phase of this year. My wife is at home a lot more. She's working from home now. She's still working, but it's nice to
Hmm.
have her around a lot more, and she's with the kids a lot more. It's beautiful. Like the kind of balance of our family is now coming back into its fullness. It's lovely. Um, and it's allowing me a little bit more free time to really push forwards because I've grown Mantra Menswork over this last year whilst full time dadding
Yeah,
a 6, a 3, and a 1 year old. It's been challenging.
you've really grown it, man. It's really been
Yeah,
beautiful to see that.
and there's a few things coming out this year that we've got two retreats, 2 weekend retreats, one in Spain on the 20th of October, one just north of Glasgow on the 10th of November. We've also got 2 one-day men's council retreats, which are on the 3rd of September in Glasgow and the 5th of November in Edinburgh. I'm also going to Egypt at the end of the year to co-run a retreat, and building up for, as you know, the Chieftains Council coming next year, gathering all the leaders of this work together to support each other to do better and be better. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that seems like that's needed right now
Totally.
for some reason. It was always going to happen, and then
It
it's
had
just
to happen. I
yeah.
just know that there's this. We can't, as leaders of this work, I feel like we need to walk the walk. If we're supporting men through this work, through men's work, through men's work facilitation, if we're supporting men, we also need to be doing that for ourselves. We need
Hmm.
to serve from a full cup, and we need to get clarity of vision and purpose through collaboration and challenge, compassionate challenge with other leaders. I think that's the only way we grow this community.
Yeah, and there's something you said around how do we hold the standard.
Mm.
That's powerful. It's needed, and that there's no government regulation that I want
Oh,
to be in
totally.
control of that.
But it's also just learning. Like
Yeah,
it's
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 inspiring as well as
yeah,
learning. Yeah,
totally.
the
If
inspiration.
we hold each other accountable and we support each other into the fullness, because that's what we're doing for other men. We are raising men up in the UK.
Hmm.
It's happening worldwide, but we're focused on the UK. We're raising men up to step into their fullness, and we should do that as leaders if we're going to serve fully. So going back to sacrificial service, if we're going to serve fully, we need to raise each other up as leaders. And sometimes the tendency can be that it pockets off, and we get a bit insular about our own activities. I know I have in the past with previous businesses, and I really feel very strongly, and I'm fully committed and devoted to this work, and I want to get a group of leaders together because if you're the best person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So I want strong leaders around me that I can bounce ideas off.
Hmm. Forge bonds together.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, good man. Love
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
We spent too much time together.
Yeah.